My paralyzed dad made me sacrifice my Ivy League dreams and my fiancé to be his full-time caregiver for 22 years. But then I caught him walking at 3 a.m. on his own 2 feet, and everything changed. I was organizing the garage at 3 in the morning when Dad's old deployment playlist drifted from inside. My whole body went cold. Dad had been paralyzed for 22 years. I crept toward the sound and froze. My father was dancing in our living room, spinning like he was 20 again. Our eyes met and time stopped. The words came rushing out of me. How long? His answer destroyed me. Since the beginning. 22 effing years of lies. I'd built my entire life around caring for my paralyzed war hero father. I became a nurse specifically for him. I threw away my Columbia acceptance letter and handed Ashton back his ring when Seattle called his name. Every single decision bent around my dad's wheelchair. Mom appeared in the doorway and her sigh said everything. The exhaustion in her voice when she admitted to knowing made me want to scream. Dad shrank before my eyes, mumbling about how it started, how the money was too good to pass up. The words blurred together as I thought about every birthday I'd missed, every opportunity I'd passed up, every time I'd helped him into bed. I found myself asking where his wheelchair was, my voice eerily calm. He pointed to the garage, his off-limits man cave. I went inside for the first time to find a full gym. Weights lined the walls. A treadmill faced an old TV. Stacks of VHS tapes labeled by year filled a shelf. My hands shook as I grabbed last year's tape. There he was at 2:47 a.m., running hard while Mom and I slept upstairs. They looked like guilty children when I came back inside. Dad's confession spilled out in pieces. Night shifts at a warehouse across town. Cash only. They knew him as Mike. $300,000 saved while I worked 30 hours a week to pay for my own therapy. But the real confession came next. His voice dropped as he explained about another soldier, with the same name as my dad. The soldier had saved a general's son in Kandahar and took shrapnel to his spine. The army owed the guy a massive payout, lifetime disability at the highest rate. But the soldier died from complications before the paperwork went through. Dad was there when they called the name. He saw the confusion, the bureaucratic mess, and he took it. Claimed he was the hero. Claimed the paralysis. Claimed the monthly checks that should have gone to a dead hero's family. They never double-checked, he said. Different units, similar names. I just became him. Mom sat there nodding like this made it acceptable. Like stealing a dead soldier's identity and his family's compensation was just smart thinking. Like forcing their daughter to give up her dreams was worth the payout. The cruelest part was James, my boyfriend who'd actually lost his legs in Afghanistan, who looked up to my father, who met with him twice a week to learn about living with paralysis. The betrayal felt like drowning. Do you know what I gave up? My voice cracked. I turned down Columbia. I lost Ashton. I've been wiping your butt and pushing your wheelchair while you were doing midnight cardio sessions. Mom tried to justify it. The money set us up for life. They'd planned to tell me eventually. They were protecting me from poverty. Each excuse made me sicker. I left for Grandma's house 2 hours away. She wasn't surprised when I told her. She'd suspected something but had no idea about the full extent. 3 days later, James appeared at her door looking confused about missed support group meetings. Watching his face crumble as I explained made something inside me break. He stole from a dead soldier, James said quietly, from his family, and he sat there giving me advice about honor and sacrifice. The veteran community exploded. Someone reported Dad for fraud. Mom called begging me to come home to help them figure out what to do. She actually said we needed to get our stories straight. I hung up on her. A package arrived at Grandma's with Dad's handwriting. Inside, documents about the real hero who'd saved lives and lost his legs, photos of his widow and kids who never got their father's benefits, and a note from Dad. I'm transferring what's left to you. Consider it payment for the life you didn't get to live. Blood money. That's what he was offering me. Payment for my stolen youth, my sacrificed dreams, my broken engagement. The investigator called that evening. They'd frozen Dad's accounts and were building a case. They wanted my testimony. I sat at Grandma's kitchen table, surrounded by evidence of 22 years of deception. I thought about the life I should have lived, but instead spent caring for a man who could not only walk, but run, who worked nights while I worked days to pay for his medical supplies. Mom texted that night, "Please don't do this to our family, as if we'd ever been that." I looked at the investigator's card. The choice was easy. My parents had stolen 22 years from me. They'd stolen hundreds of thousands from a dead hero's family. They'd made me an unwitting accomplice in their crime. I decided I would tell them everything, and maybe, finally, I could stop pretending to. The next morning, I drove to the federal building downtown. My hands shook on the steering wheel, but my resolve was steady. I'd barely slept, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. The investigator, Agent Chen, met me in the lobby. He looked younger than I expected, maybe 35, with kind eyes that reminded me of James. He led me to a small conference room and offered me water, which I gratefully accepted. I told him everything, every detail I could remember. The late-night sounds I'd dismissed, the locked garage, the way Dad always insisted on privacy for his exercises. He took notes and asked careful questions, never rushing me. When I mentioned the VHS tapes, his eyes lit up. Physical evidence was gold, he explained. He asked if I could get them. I explained about being at Grandma's, about not wanting to go back to that house of lies. He understood, but said the tapes would help seal the case. We scheduled another meeting for the following week. I left feeling empty but somehow lighter, like I'd pulled a pin on a grenade and was waiting for the explosion, but at least the weight was off my shoulders. Grandma made tea when I got back, her special blend with honey and lemon. She didn't ask questions, just sat with me while I stared at nothing, her presence more comforting than any words. That evening, Mom called Grandma's landline. Grandma answered, and I heard her voice go cold, colder than I'd ever heard it. She told Mom I wasn't available and that she should be ashamed of herself. Then she hung up. Simple as that. I loved her even more in that moment. The next few days blurred together. I called my supervisor at the hospital, explained I had a family emergency. She was understanding, told me to take the time I needed. I didn't tell her what was happening. Not yet, but I would have to soon. James texted every day. Short messages. Just checking in. Thinking of you. Here if you need me. He was processing his own anger, his own sense of betrayal. We met for coffee on day 4 at a small place near Grandma's. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes. We sat outside even though it was cold, neither of us wanting to be confined. He told me about calling other veterans from the support group, about the disbelief, the anger. Some didn't believe it at first. first, said my dad would never do that. Others weren't surprised, said they'd always felt something was off about his story. We talked about the support group, about all the men who'd looked up to my father, who'd taken his advice about everything from managing phantom pain to dealing with PTSD, who'd modeled their lives after his supposed resilience. The damage went deep, way beyond just me and him. It was a cancer that had spread through an entire community of people who deserved better, people who'd actually sacrificed, people who'd actually suffered. And somewhere out there was a family who'd never gotten what they were owed, who'd struggled without the support they deserved while my parents lived off their loved ones' heroism. The next week dragged by like molasses in January. Each day felt like a month, each hour like a day. I went back to the house with Agent Chen to get those tapes. The drive there was silent except for the rain pattering against the windshield. My stomach churned with every familiar turn, every street that led closer to what used to be home. Dad wasn't home, but Mom was. She stood in the doorway like a guard dog, arms crossed, wearing the same coral cardigan she'd worn to my college graduation, the one I'd saved up to buy her. Agent Chen showed his badge and explained we had a warrant. Her face went white as printer paper. She stepped aside without a word, but I could see her hands trembling as she gripped the doorframe. The garage felt different in daylight, smaller somehow, less like a secret lair and more like what it was, a room full of lies. Dust motes danced in the afternoon sun streaming through the window, the same window I used to look out while helping Dad with his exercises. The irony tasted bitter. We packed up the tapes in evidence boxes, every single one, 22 years of proof, each tape labeled in Dad's neat handwriting. Progress, January 1999. Milestone, can run 5 miles, getting stronger every day. Mom followed us around, wringing her hands. Her wedding ring caught the light, the same ring Dad had supposedly struggled to put on her finger with his disabled hands. She kept saying my name, trying to get me to look at her. Sarah, please. Sarah, honey. Sarah, we need to talk. I didn't look. Couldn't. Agent Chen was professional, but I could see his jaw tighten when he saw the equipment. The treadmill still had Dad's sweat towel draped over it, still damp. Back at Grandma's, I tried to return to some kind of normal. Her house smelled like lavender and old books, nothing like the antiseptic smell that had clung to my parents' house. I set up my laptop at her kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten Sunday dinners as a kid, back when I believed the lies. Started applying for jobs in other cities. Seattle, Portland, Denver, anywhere but here. My savings were thin, but I had enough for a fresh start. Maybe. I'd been so careful with money for so long, squirreling away every penny I could while buying Dad's medical supplies. The irony wasn't lost on me. Then the calls started. Not from my parents, from everyone else. Aunt Linda called first, Dad's sister. She was crying, saying I was destroying the family, that I needed to think about what I was doing. He's your father, she wailed. He changed your diapers. He taught you to ride a bike. Yeah, I thought. He also taught me that love meant sacrifice, that family meant enabling lies, that I wasn't worth the truth. I hung up. Then Uncle Eugene called. Then cousins I hadn't spoken to in years. Then family friends who'd attended all those 4th of July barbecues where Dad held court from his wheelchair, regaling everyone with war stories that belonged to a dead man, all with the same message. Drop this. Come home. Stop being selfish. Each call made me angrier. Where were they when I was unaliving myself taking care of him? Where were they when I gave up Columbia? When I lost Ashton? When I was mixing protein shakes at 3 a.m. because Dad needed them for his muscle atrophy? Nowhere. But now they had opinions. The story Dad was spreading became clear through these calls. I was having a mental breakdown, jealous of his strength, angry about my life choices, making up wild stories for attention. Some believed him. Others didn't, but thought I should let it go anyway. Family was family, they said. You don't air dirty laundry. You handle it privately. As if 22 years of theft and fraud was just dirty laundry. As if destroying your daughter's life was just a private family matter. I started screening calls. Only answered for Grandma, James, and Agent Chen. Everyone else could leave a message. Most did. Long rambling voicemails about family loyalty and forgiveness. About how Dad had suffered enough. About how I was being vindictive. Delete, delete, delete. 2 weeks after that first meeting, Agent Chen called with an update. His voice was careful, professional, but I could hear the anger underneath. They'd found more evidence. Dad had been sloppy in the early years. Paper trails that didn't quite match up. Timelines that overlapped. Medical records that showed treatment at one hospital while he was supposedly at another. They were building a solid case but needed more. Specifically, they needed to find the real soldier's family. The widow and kids from the photos. The people who'd been cheated out of everything while my parents played house with their benefits. It was delicate. They'd been wronged for over 2 decades. The investigators had to approach carefully. I offered to help, but Chen said no. Better to keep me separate from that part. Made sense, but I still felt useless. Like I'd lit a fuse and now could only wait for the explosion. Mom showed up at Grandma's one afternoon, just appeared on the porch like a ghost. I saw her through the living room window, standing there in her best dress, the navy one with tiny flowers, the one she wore to church. Grandma wouldn't let her in, but Mom stood outside and talked through the screen door. She looked older, grayer, her perfect suburban mom facade cracking like old paint. She tried everything. Tears, anger, guilt. Told me about the time she'd been in labor with me for 36 hours, how Dad had held her hand the whole time, how they'd cried when they first held me, even offered me money, $50,000 to make this go away, cash, in a bag, right there on the porch, a brown leather bag I recognized, the one Dad used to carry his medical supplies in. I wanted to laugh or scream. Where was this money when I was working myself to death? When I was choosing between textbooks and groceries? When I was wearing shoes held together with duct tape because Dad's treatments were expensive? Grandma told her to leave, threatened to call the police. Mom left the bag on the porch. We didn't touch it. Agent Chen picked it up the next day as evidence. Attempted witness bribery, he called it. Another charge to add to the pile. The investigation picked up speed. More agents got involved. Financial forensics people who could trace every dirty dollar. They set up in a conference room downtown, walls covered with timelines and bank statements. I went in once to answer questions. The scope of it made me dizzy. They found offshore accounts, investments, properties in other states, 3 rental houses in Florida, a cabin in Colorado, all bought with blood money. My parents hadn't just stolen benefits. They'd built an empire on a dead soldier's name. The numbers made me sick. Over $2 million over 22 years. While that soldier's family struggled, while I worked myself raw, while other veterans scraped by, while real heroes lived under bridges. $2 million. I threw up when Chen told me. Actually ran to Grandma's bathroom and heaved until nothing came up. Then sat on the floor and cried. Not pretty tears. Ugly, snotty, can't breathe tears. The kind that make your whole body hurt. Grandma found me there. Sat on the floor with me despite her bad hip. Didn't say anything. Just held my hand with her soft, wrinkled fingers that smelled like hand cream and coffee. James and I started meeting regularly. Coffee mostly at a little place downtown where no one knew us. Sometimes dinner at the Vietnamese restaurant by the hospital. We weren't dating. Couldn't even think about that. But we understood each other. He'd lost his legs for real in an IED explosion outside Kandahar. I'd lost my life to a lie. Both of us betrayed by someone we trusted. He told me about the support group, how it had fallen apart after the news broke. Some guys couldn't handle the betrayal. Felt like every bit of advice Dad gave was poisoned. Every inspirational speech, every tough love moment, all of it built on stolen valor. Others were angry at me, said I should have handled it quietly, not destroyed a good thing, even if it was built on lies. The divide was ugly. Men who'd been brothers now couldn't be in the same room, all because my father wanted to play hero without paying the price. James said one guy, Tommy, had relapsed, started drinking again after 5 years sober, because if Mike Washington could lie about everything, what else was a lie? 3 months in, the other shoe dropped. Dad got arrested at work, at the warehouse where he'd been Mike for 20 years, where he'd won Employee of the Month 12 times, where he'd inspired others with his courage. They let him out in handcuffs in front of everyone. His supervisor later told me Dad had tried to run. Actually tried to run on the legs he'd pretended didn't work for over 2 decades. Mom got picked up at her book club, surrounded by her friends, discussing this month's selection while police officers waited outside. The suburban drama of it all would have been funny if it wasn't so pathetic. Their photos made the local news. Not national, just local, but enough. Enough that everyone knew. The grocery store where I'd shopped for Dad's special diet foods. The bank where I'd deposited my paychecks, most of which went to his care. The pharmacy where I'd picked up Dad's fake prescriptions for years, where the pharmacist had always praised me for being such a devoted daughter. Everyone knew. Some looked at me with pity, others with blame, like I'd had a choice, like I should have kept the family secret, like being a good daughter meant enabling crimes. I stopped going out except for necessities. Let Grandma do the shopping. Hid like a coward, but I didn't care. The lawyer Mom hired was good, expensive. Gray Kellerman from some fancy firm downtown with leather chairs and marble floors. He tried to get the charges reduced, claimed Dad had PTSD, that he'd convinced himself the lie was true, some kind of psychological break, dissociative disorder he called it. Mom was just a victim, he said, a battered wife going along out of fear. The story kept changing, each version more ridiculous than the last. First Dad was a hero who'd exaggerated his injuries, then he was mentally ill, then he was a victim of the system who'd been denied proper care. But some people bought it, started a Support the Washingtons Facebook page, said they were being railroaded by an ungrateful daughter, posted old photos of our happy family, me on Dad's lap at Christmas, him teaching me to throw a baseball from his wheelchair. All of it fake, all of it propaganda. I had to delete my social media. The messages were too much, half calling me brave, half calling me a traitor. People I'd gone to high school with choosing sides, all of them exhausting. Agent Chen kept me updated on the real soldiers' family. They'd found them in Michigan. The widow, Catherine, had remarried after 10 years alone, raised 3 kids on her own before that, worked 2 jobs cleaning offices at night, cashiering during the day, never got the benefits she was owed. The kids grew up thinking their dad abandoned them. The army told her there was no record of him qualifying for disability. Some paperwork mix-up, they said. Computer error. She'd fought for years, then given up, moved on, built a life on struggle instead of support. Her oldest son joined the army like his father. Her daughter became a teacher. The youngest struggled, got into trouble, always wondered why Dad left. When they told her the truth, she didn't believe it at first. Then she cried. Then she got angry. 22 years of anger all at once. She wanted to meet me. I wasn't ready for that. Maybe later, maybe never. I didn't know. How do you face someone whose life was destroyed so yours could be built on lies? The trial date got set for 8 months out. Both parents out on bail with restrictions. Couldn't leave the state. Had to surrender passports. Ankle monitors that beeped if they went too far. The whole thing. They stayed in the house, blinds drawn, became ghosts in their own neighborhood. The neighbors who'd brought casseroles when Dad was struggling now crossed the street to avoid them. Good. Let them feel trapped. Let them feel watched. Let them understand a fraction of what they'd put me through. I kept working. Got a job at a different hospital across town. Night shifts in the cardiac unit. Less chance of running into people I knew. The work helped. Focusing on real patients with real problems. Heart attacks and surgeries. Not manufactured drama. Not stolen valor. Just people who needed help. It reminded me why I became a nurse. Not for Dad. For this. For actually making a difference. For being useful in a way that mattered. The family pressure didn't stop. If anything, it got worse as the trial approached. Aunt Linda tried to ambush me at work. Waited in the parking garage for 5 hours. Security had to escort her out while she screamed about family loyalty. Uncle Robert left 37 voicemails in one night. All variations of the same theme. Family sticks together. Blood is thicker than water. You're unaliving your grandmother with this stress. That last one almost worked. Grandma was stressed. Wasn't eating as much. Lost 10 pounds she couldn't afford to lose. Looked tired. But when I tried to apologize, to offer to drop everything, she grabbed my hand hard. Her grip stronger than it looked. Looked me in the eye with those sharp blue eyes that had seen through Dad's lies even when I couldn't. Told me the only thing unaliving her was watching her son's lies destroy her granddaughter. That she'd rather die with truth than live with lies. That woman was tougher than any fake war hero could ever be. 6 months in, something shifted. The extended family started to fracture. Some cousins reached out, said they'd suspected something, remembered things that didn't add up, like the time Dad had reflexively caught a falling glass at Thanksgiving, or how his paralyzed legs would twitch during football games. Uncle Wayne admitted he'd seen Dad walking once, late at night, getting something from his car, but convinced himself he'd dreamed it. The stories trickled out. Little things people had noticed but ignored, because it was easier, because questioning meant accepting the unthinkable. That their war hero brother, uncle, friend was a fraud, that they'd been fooled, that they'd helped enable the lie through their silence. The family divide grew wider. Those who still supported my parents versus those who didn't. Christmas was a disaster. Half the family at Grandma's, half at but Aunt Linda's. No one speaking to the other side. Mom tried one more time to reach out, sent a letter through her lawyer. 10 pages of her perfect handwriting on cream stationery, the expensive kind she used for thank you notes. 10 pages of justification and manipulation. How they'd done it for me, to give me opportunities. How the real soldier was dead anyway, so what did it matter? How I was being cruel and vindictive. How I'd regret this when they were gone. How Dad had been a good father, wheelchair or not. How she'd been a good mother. How they'd sacrificed for me. I showed it to Agent Chen. He added it to the file. More evidence of no remorse, no understanding of what they'd done. Just narcissistic justification dressed up as parental love. I burned the letter in Grandma's fireplace. Watched the lies turn to ash. The expensive paper curled and blackened. It felt good. Better than it should have. Like burning 22 years of gaslighting. The real soldier's family filed a civil suit, separate from the criminal case. They wanted every penny back, plus damages, plus interest, plus pain and suffering, the house, the cars, the investments, the boat Dad bought for his aqua therapy, everything. Mom and Dad's lawyer tried to negotiate, offered a settlement, $500,000. Catherine's lawyer laughed, actually laughed in the conference room, said they'd see them in court, said his client had waited 22 years. She could wait a little longer for justice, for vindication, for the world to know her husband died a hero while another man lived as a fraud. I liked him immediately, wished I could afford someone like that, but I didn't need to sue. I just needed them gone, out of my life, out of everyone's life, in prison where they belonged. 7 months in, I started therapy. Should have started sooner but couldn't afford it. Insurance covered some after I met the deductible. James recommended his therapist, Dr. Martinez, said she specialized in betrayal trauma. That first session, I couldn't stop crying. 45 minutes of tears and snot and barely coherent rambling. She just listened, handed me tissues, said it was normal, said I'd been living in survival mode for so long I didn't know how to do anything else. We started meeting weekly, slowly unpacking 22 years of manipulation, of gaslighting, of sacrificing myself for someone who was laughing at me behind closed doors. It hurt, like reopening old wounds, like cleaning out an infection, but necessary, like draining poison from an abscess. She helped me see the patterns, how every I love you came with a price, how every moment of pride was tinged with lies. The VHS tapes became key evidence. Hours and hours of Dad working out, running on the treadmill at 2 a.m., lifting weights in the middle of the night, dancing to old rock songs, all time-stamped, all while I was sleeping upstairs, exhausted from caring for him. The prosecutors made a compilation, 3 hours of footage condensed to 45 minutes, showed it at the pretrial hearing. Dad's lawyer tried to claim they were faked, deep fakes or something, computer-generated. The judge wasn't buying it, especially when they brought in experts who verified the tapes were authentic, recorded on equipment from the 90s and 2000s. Magnetic tape degradation consistent with age. No way to fake that. The look on Dad's face when they played them in court, finally caught, finally exposed. No wheelchair to hide behind, no lies left to tell. Just a man who'd stolen another man's life and ruined his daughter's in the process. He actually tried to stand up and leave, forgetting he was supposed to be paralyzed. His lawyer had to remind him to stay seated. The judge saw it all. The trial started on a Tuesday in March. Cold and rainy, like the universe was setting the mood. I wore my only suit, the black one from nursing school graduation. James came with me, Grandma too, despite my protests about her health. She said she'd waited 22 years to see justice. She wasn't missing it now. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, not like TV, just a regular room with uncomfortable benches and flickering fluorescent lights. Dad sat at the defense table in his wheelchair, still playing the part. Mom beside him in her church dress. They didn't look at me. I was glad. Didn't think I could handle their fake hurt expressions. The prosecutor, Janet Morrison, was all business. Short gray hair and glasses that meant business. She laid out the case piece by piece. The stolen identity, the forged documents, the 22 years of fraud. She played the tapes, all 45 minutes. The courtroom was dead silent except for the sound of Dad's feet pounding the treadmill at 2:47 a.m. Dad's lawyer tried everything, said the footage was old, said Dad had good days and bad days, said paralysis wasn't always complete. The judge actually snorted at that one. Then they brought in the medical experts. 3 different doctors who examined Dad. All said the same thing. No evidence of spinal injury, no nerve damage, nothing. Just a healthy 58-year-old man who could run 5 miles without breaking a sweat. Mom took the stand on day 3, cried the whole time, said Dad forced her, said she was scared, said she wanted to tell me but couldn't. The prosecutor destroyed her, brought out bank statements she'd signed, emails she'd sent, the letters she'd written me. By the end, even her tears looked fake, which they probably were. She'd been faking emotion for 22 years. What was one more performance? Catherine testified on day 4, the real soldier's widow. She was smaller than I expected, grayer, worn down by decades of struggle. She talked about her husband, the real hero, how he'd saved 3 men in Kandahar, how he'd called her the night before he died, how she'd fought for benefits for 5 years before giving up, how her kids grew up without a father and without support, how she'd cleaned toilets at 3 a.m. to keep food on the table. I cried, couldn't help it. This woman had lived the life my parents stole, had suffered while we lived in comfort. The jury cried too. Even the bailiff looked misty. Dad testified on day 5, still in the wheelchair, still playing victim, said he'd meant to tell the truth, said it got away from him, said he'd been protecting me. The prosecutor asked him to stand up. He said he couldn't. She asked again. His lawyer objected. The judge overruled. Dad sat there, trapped. Finally, after 5 minutes of silence, he stood. Just stood up like it was nothing. Like 22 years of lies could just evaporate. The courtroom gasped. Someone actually said, "Holy shut," out loud. The judge didn't even call for order. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Longest 2 days of my life. James and I sat in the courthouse cafeteria drinking terrible coffee. Grandma knitted. She'd taken up knitting during the trial. Said it kept her hands busy. Made 3 scarves in a week. All ugly. All perfect. When the verdict came, we filed back in. My hands shook so bad I couldn't hold my phone. Guilty. All counts. Both of them. Dad got 8 years federal prison. Mom got 5, plus restitution, plus fines, plus Catherine's family would get everything in the civil case. The house, the cars, the investments, all of it. Dad actually fainted when they read the sentence. Just crumpled. They had to carry him out. Still performing to the end. Mom screamed at me as they led her away. Called me ungrateful. Said I'd I'd ruined everything, said she'd never forgive me. Good. I didn't want her forgiveness. I wanted my life back. Wanted those 22 years back. But that was impossible. So I'd take justice instead. The next few weeks were a blur. Packing up the house for the estate sale. Every room full of memories that were all lies. Found Dad's real medical records in a safe. The ones showing his minor shoulder injury from basic training. Nothing else. Found receipts for the wheelchair. 5 different models over the years. Each one more expensive. Each one a prop in their sick play. The extended family imploded completely. Aunt Linda had a breakdown. Literally. Ended up in psychiatric hold for a week. Uncle Eugene stopped speaking to everyone. The cousins picked sides and stuck to them. Family gatherings became impossible. Good riddance. They'd enabled this for years. Let them deal with the consequences. I started getting letters from other victims. Other families who'd donated to Dad's fake veteran funds. Who'd been inspired by his fake story. Who'd modeled their lives after his fake courage. Some were angry at me. Said I'd destroyed their hope. Others thanked me. Said the truth was better than the lie, even if it hurt. Catherine and I finally met 6 months after the trial. Coffee at a neutral location. She looked better, healthier. The settlement money helped. Her kids were getting therapy. Finally understanding their father hadn't abandoned them. That he'd died a hero. That someone had stolen his story and their future. She didn't blame me. Said I was a victim too. We cried together. 2 women whose lives had been shaped by one man's lies. Ashton reached out 8 months later. Saw the news coverage. We met for dinner at our old place. The Thai restaurant by the university. He looked good. Seattle had been good to him. He was engaged. Happy. But he wanted to know if I was okay. If I needed anything. The ring I'd given back was in a drawer somewhere. His fiancée knew the story. Understood. We talked for 3 hours. About what could have been. About what was. About moving forward. He hugged me when we left. Told me I'd done the right thing. That he was proud of me. I ugly cried in my car for 20 minutes after. A year later, I finally used Dad's blood money. The $50,000 he'd left on Grandma's porch. After the attempted bribery charges were processed, the court determined it should go toward restitution. I worked with Catherine's lawyer to ensure it went directly to her children's college funds. No middleman, no complications. Just a direct transfer to help kids who'd grown up without their father's support finally get the education they deserved. Grandma lived to see me graduate. Died 2 weeks later in her sleep, peaceful. Said she could finally rest, knowing I was free. James and I started dating for real 18 months after the trial. Took it slow. Both of us had trust issues for obvious reasons, but it worked. He understood the anger, the sense of betrayal, the way it changed how you saw the world. We moved to Portland eventually. Fresh start, new jobs. No one there knew our story. We could just be us.